Good morning, everybody. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section. And on behalf of our Commissioner David Geragino and our staff in Taxpayer Services, we'd like to welcome you to today's presentation on marketplace facilitators and sellers. So want to make sure that we give you some good information this morning and certainly appreciate your attending today. Uh, with me and on your screen now, we have Katie Julian, who's in our taxpayer education section, and she'll be walking you through the materials today. And we've put a link in the chat uh, for where you can get a copy of the PDF of this presentation. It's already on our website, and we will be posting a recording to our webinar video library later today as well. And we have with us as a subject matter expert today, Mr. Jacob Roper from our audit division, and he's going to audit you. No, he's not. Well, he might, but he's not here for that purpose today. He's here to be a subject matter expert on the topic of marketplace facilitators. So we're glad you're with us, and we'll let Katie take over here, and Jacob and I will come back in a little bit later. And Katie will explain how we kind of do this for those of you that may not have attended other presentations that we've done in the past. Katie, take it away.
All right, thanks y'all, and thanks to Jacob for joining us today. Happy that you're here with us. We had over 800 people register for this webinar, which kind of surprised me with the high numbers there. Usually for the niche topics, the numbers aren't that high. So I think we've either, my guess is that we have a lot of people that are marketplace sellers. That would be my guess here. So just to call your attention, Billy did tell you we've got, there will be a recording of this webinar on our webinar video library either later today or maybe tomorrow. If you have not already checked out our webinar video library, please do. We're going to tell you about some specific webinars that kind of relate to the one we're talking about today that are in that library. Also on something new here, we've got a QR code that will take you over to a PDF of this presentation. Like Billy said, there's also a link over in the chat. It's on, if you wanted to know the link how to get there, it's tn.gov/revenue, and then click on taxpayer education and then tax webinars. That's where the library is, and also the PDF of today's presentation. You can also see a listing there of all of our future webinars. So we've got chat closed down right now. We'll open it back up as soon as we get about halfway through and are at the halfway point at the end of the slides. So save your questions if we don't get around to answering your questions today. We wanted to give you this information, how to reach out to us. We'll share this again in a little while with you, but you can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov or call our general tax line at 615-253-0600. So with all that stuff out of the way, we'll go ahead and get started here. Again, today's presentation is about marketplace facilitators and sellers. So to get started here, we're going to define what a marketplace is, first of all. A marketplace is a physical or electronic place, platform, forum, including but not limited to stores, booths, internet website mainly, catalogs, dedicated sales software application, anywhere where tangible personal property or any of the things or service or subject to Tennessee sales tax are offered for sale. A marketplace facilitator and seller, those are the two topics we're going to talk about today, the facilitators and the sellers. We're going to talk about definitions of those terms, the registration requirements, going to focus in on the sales tax aspects of this. We'll touch on like business tax aspects to these roles. I'm going to talk a little bit about Nexus, out-of-state Nexus, rates and reporting, and then we'll have hopefully plenty of time at the end to discuss some frequently asked questions as well as your questions that you will put into chat when we open that up. Just so you know, well, let's see here. Let's move along here. All right, so this is a lot of information here for you. Topics, resources about this topic in particular. Again, you can see here's a QR code for the PDF of this presentation that you can't click directly on these hyperlinks from your WebEx screen, but if you go ahead and get to the PDF or download that PDF, you'll be able to access all these links here. There is a whole topic page dedicated to marketplace facilitators and sellers. It's within our sales tax page, but lots of great information there. There's a whole section dedicated to marketplace facilitators and sellers in our revenue help section, a whole slew of articles specifically about this topic. Linking you here over to our sales tax manual and business tax manual, because honestly, folks, today we're not going to be talking basics on anything. We are going to be going over how these taxes affect marketplace facilitators and sellers, but we're not going to be going into the basics of sales tax and business tax, any others. So those manuals are, if you haven't already discovered our tax manuals, they're fantastic. Some very specific webinars here that I think would be good for those of you that are joining us and are interested in this topic today. Next is for out-of-state businesses, reporting out-of-state sales by delivery destination. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we have a whole webinar dedicated to that. And again, just some webinars on some basics, sales tax basics, business tax basics, franchise excise tax basics. If anything that we're talking about today goes over your head in terms of just tax basics, refer you back over there to those webinars, because we're not going to be going over that stuff. One other thing I definitely want to call to your attention is that we are not going to be talking about short-term vacation rental marketplaces today. We have a whole dedicated webinar to that topic. There are online marketplace facilitators for short-term rentals like Airbnb, Vrbo, those. So we've already covered that topic in a webinar. So check that webinar out if you are interested in that topic. Excuse me, I may have to mute and cough some during this. I'm just getting over a like 2-month-long bronchitis thing. So, all right. So another thing I want to call your attention here to is a very important notice about this topic specifically, and that is important notice 2015. I'm going to put it in your chat real quick as well. A link over, let's see if I still have that copied. Yes, I do. A link over to that important notice. It is from July of 2020. What's significant about that time is that is we call it post Wayfair. In sales tax law, there's like a pre-Wayfair and post Wayfair. Very important Supreme Court decision, South Dakota versus Wayfair, that really honestly just changed the landscape of how sales tax is applied to out-of-state shipments. So shipments coming in from out of state into a state. So that important notice will give you more information about that. Plus, we're going to be covering just a lot of what's in this webinar, but there's a link to it for you. So the way we're going to break things down today is first we're going to talk about marketplace facilitators, and then we're going to talk about marketplace sellers. There's probably not a whole lot of marketplace facilitators on this webinar, to be honest with you. Maybe some representatives from these companies, but there's only a handful in the big scheme of things of marketplace facilitators. What my prediction is that we've probably got a whole slew of marketplace sellers here, but I think it's important for you to understand the facilitator, kind of where things are coming from when it comes to the facilitator. So we're going to briefly cover the topics related to marketplace facilitators here. How marketplace facilitator is defined. It is a business, including any affiliates, that agrees with a seller to facilitate the sale of tangible personal property or services through its marketplace. Either directly or indirectly collects payment from the purchaser and then transmits that payment over to the seller. Of course, the marketplace facilitators that we're all probably very familiar with are Amazon, Etsy. There's really more than you would think these days, but those are the big ones. eBay, even Walmart now is a marketplace facilitator. If you're a seller, you can sell on lots of different platforms. So that's the definition there. What is not defined as a marketplace facilitator? Auctioneers. On that note, I just want to let you all know we are planning to do a webinar, and I've heard that there might be a tax manual dedicated to that topic coming up at some point in the future. So be on the lookout for that if you are an auctioneer. But an auctioneer is not a marketplace facilitator. Different rules, different tax rules around that topic. Businesses who exclusively provide advertising special services or payment processing services, derivatives, clearing organizations, designated contract markets, foreign board of trade, or swap execution facility registered with the FCTC. What is FCCC? I have to look that up myself. It's the commodity or CFTC, sorry, Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Okay, whatever all that is not marketplace facilitators. But this last one here on the list, I really want to take a minute to call to your attention. Delivery network companies. These are your like maybe a food delivery, DoorDash, something like that. They can elect to be a marketplace facilitator and register for sales tax with us, but they are not required to at this point. All right, they can elect to be an entity that does collect sales tax on behalf of the places that they're delivering for, but they don't have to. If you are maybe let's say a restaurant or a business that uses a delivery network company, someone picks up items from your store, from your restaurants, and then delivers them. I would say the thing there is to make sure that there's just open communication and find out if that delivery network company is electing to collect sales tax and then remit it on your behalf or not, but because they're not required. All right, we're going to focus mainly on the sales tax issues here for marketplace facilitator. The marketplace facilitator must collect and remit Tennessee sales tax if they made or facilitated a total sales to customers in Tennessee of 100,000 or more during the previous 12-month period. I want to take just a moment to mention here too, we are just going to be talking about Tennessee taxes. Obviously, we're the Tennessee Department of Revenue. That's what we deal with here. But I did notice on your registration forms, we got a lot of questions from sellers about how's this handled in other states. Honestly, I think post Wayfair, a lot of states handle this similarly, but not all. And if you are a marketplace seller, whether you're located here in Tennessee or another state, we just really want to recommend that you find out the laws, the tax laws, and how this is handled in the other states as well. There's only 50, right, that you have to look up. But anyway, so we're just going to be talking about with regards to Tennessee taxes, obviously. So if a marketplace facilitator has over 100,000 in sales to Tennessee customers that they facilitate over a 12-month period, they are required to register and then collect that sales tax on behalf of the sellers. Their own sales are counted towards that 100K threshold. I will say we're going to talk about remitting the tax and reporting it here in a little while. Those are reported differently, but in terms of whether the requirement for registration, the 100K can include the facilitator's own sales as well as the sales that they're facilitating for other sellers. All right, so for the purposes of calculating that $100,000 threshold, the facilitator should include retail sales and include exempt retail sales, but exclude sales for resale. Hope I said that right. My words felt like they were getting jumbled in my head, but exclude sales where someone presented a certificate of resale for those sales. All right, so registration for a marketplace facilitator, you can register on TNTAP. A marketplace facilitator can also register with Tennessee by accessing the streamlined sales tax registration system. This is an important part of that, going towards that 100K threshold here too. If you've never registered, if you're a marketplace facilitator and you've not yet registered and you meet that threshold within a 12-month period, you're required to register and begin collecting on the first day of the third month following the month that you meet the threshold. And again, this amount includes sales made by the facilitator and the sales the marketplace facilitator facilitates. We just touched on that on the slide before. Regarding setting up different location IDs for registration, a marketplace facilitator is going to have a separate location ID for the sales that they facilitate for other sellers on their platform, and then a separate one for their own sales. Very important there. Of course, here is a link over to TinTap if you've got the PDF. That is where all filing and paying takes place here in the state of Tennessee. It's electronic filing and payment is required. So this is pretty rare, but I wanted to include it in here. Exclusions from collecting sales tax if you're a marketplace facilitator. If a marketplace facilitator can demonstrate substantially all of their marketplace sellers are currently registered to collect sales tax, then they are excluded from collecting. A facilitator wishing to request a waiver from that should reach out to us, the Tennessee Department, directly at 615-741-0035. And then if you're granted a waiver, then sales tax must be collected by marketplace sellers. I'm going to take this opportunity again just to repeat, if you are a marketplace seller, staying in communication with the facilitator and understanding the agreement there. Are they collecting sales tax on your behalf? If they're not, which if it's a smaller marketplace facilitator, or let's say it's one of these marketplace facilitators where substantially all are collecting sales, all the sellers are collecting it on their own, and that means you do too. That it's just a conversation or a contract. Actually, make sure you understand what's in that contract between the facilitator and the seller, because somebody has to be collecting the sales tax, right? This one right here is very rare. This exclusion is the marketplace facilitator and seller contractually agree that the seller will collect and remit all applicable taxes, and the seller has to meet the following, and that is annual gross sales of over, what is that? Billion? Is that a billion? That's a billion, including gross sales of any related entities. So very rare there. We're not even going to spend any more time talking about that one, but that's another exclusion. All right, just a minute here this is kind of sales tax basics, but I thought it was important to include here about the Tennessee sales tax rates. Most of you, most facilitators, and then sellers that are on here with us, even those sales that you have outside of the ones through your facilitator, you may use software that has this information plugged into it automatically, but just thought it was important to go through it for just a minute here. Our general sales tax rate in Tennessee for tangible personal property and taxable services is 7%. There's going to be an additional local rate that is on top of that, that's either going to be 2.75 or less. You can link directly over to a local rates link. For those of you that are out of state, that's going to be very important for you to understand, because as you can see, I'm kind of hopping around a little bit here, but if you are out of state, so no location here, you collect sales tax at the rate of the delivery destination, at the rate where your customer lives. And again, all throughout Tennessee, it's a little bit different. 7% is all across the state, and then all 95 counties have another rate that's either 2.75 or less. Sales tax rate on food or food ingredients. Now that is not prepared food. On food and food ingredients is 4%. These are this is kind of it's an outdated sales tax holiday important notice, but I think it's a really good, I keep this notice on here because it's a good way to define to you what food and food ingredients is. Specified digital products have the 7% state rate, and then a standard local flat rate of 2.75. So it's not going to be based on delivery destination for specified digital products. It's 2.5 is the local rate there. So
It's 2.5. I think you just said 2.75, but
oops,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. I just want to
Yep.
make sure.
7% state rate plus 2.5, so that is 9.5 is for specified digital products. We have a webinar dedicated to that topic. If you're wondering what a specified digital product is or want some more information on that, there's a webinar there for you. Well, I will note here to jump back up here into this box that in-state sellers will collect and remit the local tax at the rate for the local jurisdiction where the business is located. Um, that may come into play for any sellers here that are located in our state. All right, very briefly here, going to touch on mainly business tax for marketplace facilitators. And that is to let you know that marketplace facilitators should only include commissions or third-party fees when they're calculating their business tax gross receipts. All right, we're going to talk about the other side of that for the sellers here in just a few minutes. Because there's that aspect to it. All right, going to move along here to discussing marketplace sellers, who are defined as a person who sells goods or services through a marketplace that is owned or controlled, operated, owned, or controlled by a marketplace facilitator. So marketplace sellers that make any sales outside of a marketplace facilitator may be required to register for or collect and remit sales tax if, when located in Tennessee, we got kind of couple different options here. If you're a seller and you're located in Tennessee, you should register for sales tax account and file returns, even if all of your sales are made through a facilitator. Okay, that is going to give you with that Tennessee resale certificate. Um, that is, even if all of your sales are through the facility, you would just file a zero return annually. And of course, any sales outside of that facilitator, you will need to report on your own return. So let's say you sell a lot on a facilitator's website on Amazon, let's say, but you also make sales from your own website. You sell at you set up at markets. I don't know where, but any of those sales, if no one is collecting the sales tax for you, then you will collect it and remit it on your own return. Hey, Billy.
Hey, Katie. So, just one thing to point out here too. It's one of the more common things that we deal with. You say in that first bullet there under that marketplace sellers deal, if all sales are through the marketplace, sellers will report zero in sales on an annual return. It is very important to understand that once you're registered for sales tax in Tennessee, to get that resale certificate, which is a great idea, so that you can buy merchandise and not have to pay tax on the merchandise that you are selling, right? But there is an obligation to file that return to either report whatever tax you do owe, or if you don't owe tax, to show us that zero. Because if you don't, then we'll send a assessment letter out, and of course we can fix all that, we can deal with all that, but it's just sort of a hassle. So just remember, once registered, you have a filing period. A sales tax return is due by the 20th day of the month that follows the end of that period. In your example there, Katie, is an annual return.
Mhm.
So those would be due by January 20th of the following year for an annual basis. So
So,
just
Billy,
wanted
when
to point
someone
that
first
out.
registers for, I'm so glad you called attention to this because I think we should spend another minute on it. When someone first registers for the sales tax account, they're going to get that resale certificate. And again, like you said, they can go, buy products that they're intending to resell without paying tax on it. At first, they're going to be set up for for a monthly account unless they reach out to us to change that. Is that right? Or did that?
Most of the time, that's correct because that's procedurally what we do. The commissioner, and we say the commissioner, and we work for the commissioner, but
Mhm,
the commissioner's authority is to require reporting in whatever way is most expeditious for the department.
mhm,
Okay, because remember, when you're collecting Tennessee sales tax, you're acting as an agent for the state of Tennessee. So when that money is collected, it is truly the state's money at the point that you collected from your customers. So you're doing a great job. You're remitting it back to us. We're good, right? So on your certificate of registration that you get when you register, it will tell you your filing frequency. Okay.
right.
So, and of course, if you ever have any questions, pick up the phone and give us a call, shoot us an email. will tell you immediately what you need to do. And again, if you get backwards and like, oh, I got this notice and it says I owe this money and I don't really owe it, okay, call us. Let's talk about
Don't
it,
ignore it.
and we can do some adjustments, and most of the time, give you some really good advice about how to fix that situation very easily.
Yeah, so if truly all of your sales are through a facilitator or most all of them, it may behoove you to reach out to us and get set up to be an annual filer, just once a year
Right,
instead of
and we will discuss that with people on a case by
Mhm,
case basis. There are some particular procedures that we have to use,
mhm,
but we will definitely be glad to have a discussion with you guys
yeah.
about that. Absolutely. Thank
Whatever
you.
the case is, pay whatever your sales tax return is due. Make sure you, even if you don't have any don't have any sales tax to that you've not collected any, don't have any to remit, you need to at least file a zero, or else you get backwards, and we'll start receiving assessment letters from us, and we'll help you fix that. But file on time, even if it's zero. So the out of state businesses, marketplace sellers with no physical presence in Tennessee. If you sell directly to Tennessee customers and have an excess of 100K. So right now we're talking about directly. We're not talking about sales through your marketplace facilitator. Okay. Let me go back here. We're talking here about sales made outside of the facilitator. This slide's just a continuation dealing with out of state. So out of state sellers making sales to Tennessee customers outside of that facilitator. Um, if you have sales in excess of 100,000, then you should register to collect and remit Tennessee sales tax. And again, that rate that you're going to charge is going to be based on delivery destination where the customer lives. Um, let's see what this little asterisks go towards here. Okay, first, physical presence includes a storefront, employees, or operations located in Tennessee. If you've got questions about that, that's where I'm going to refer you back to the webinar that I mentioned about Nexus in Tennessee. Um, there's a link to that on the topics resources slide early on here. And then sales made through a marketplace facilitator that is registered do not count towards that 100,000 threshold. So back up to this bullet right here. You're an out-of-state company, based out of state, not in Tennessee, no physical presence. You've got sales outside of the marketplace facilitator to Tennessee customers. Um, if they exceed 100,000, you're going to need to register. The marketplace seller should only report its own sales made outside of the facilitator. Um, and then also, an out-of-state marketplace seller is not required to register in Tennessee if all of its taxable sales are made through the facilitator. A little bit about resale certificates here. Marketplace sellers purchasing products for resale from a Tennessee supplier must provide them with the Tennessee certificate of resale in order to make those purchases without tax. I should have put a link in here. We do have a webinar also dedicated to the resale certificate. So if you're interested in that topic, check that out. Just going to break this down here, a few different things to discuss on this topic. In-state marketplace sellers are going to need to provide that Tennessee supplier with the Tennessee resale certificate or a streamlined sales and use tax exemption certificate, which needs to include the Tennessee sales tax ID number in order to make those purchases that they intend to resell without paying sales tax. Out-of-state marketplace sellers, if not already registered for sales tax in Tennessee, can provide the supplier with a resale certificate issued by another state, or they can provide that streamlined sales and use tax exemption certificate that includes their tax ID number from the state that they're based out of. Sellers who are not registered for sales and use tax in any state can provide their supplier with that streamlined sales and use tax exemption certificate, and will have to include their another type of tax ID, business tax or excise ID issued by the home state, or you can supply your EIN there. If a marketplace seller does not have any tax ID number issued by a home state or an EIN, or in the case of a foreign marketplace seller, its home, county, or tax ID number. The out-of-state marketplace seller is going to have to pay tax on those purchases. You cannot purchase anything tax-free unless you have one of these options, basically. So with regards to marketplace sellers and other taxes, marketplace sellers should include sales receipts from sales facilitated through the marketplace when determining if they have substantial nexus for business tax and franchise and excise tax purposes, and then to be able to calculate their income and gross receipts. Specifically for business tax, uh, gross sales to Tennessee customers included through the facilitator, if those reach 100,000, then you're going to be on the hook for business tax. Okay, under 100,000, this was a law change that took place a little over a year ago. That threshold is now 100,000. It used to be 10,000. If you have gross sales to Tennessee customers, including through the facilitator of over 100,000, then you do need to register for Tennessee business tax. If you're an out of state, if you're an in-state business, yes, Billy.
Okay, yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt you there, Katie. You were on
Please
a roll.
do.
But, right above that business tax deal in the smaller font, that is probably the most important thing on that whole slide. The
And I skipped
marketplace
right over it.
facilitator. No, not really. You said it, but I just wanted to say it one more time. The marketplace facilitator is considered the retailer of sales facilitated on its marketplace solely for sales and use purposes. So what
Mhm,
Katie is saying is business tax, franchise and excise taxes, and that it's a
mhm,
whole different ballgame. Okay. That's where you, as a business owner, even though your sales are facilitated through Amazon Marketplace, Etsy, et cetera, are good on the sales tax part, tag you're it for business tax and franchise and excise. They don't do those taxes. Okay. So a lot of times our taxpayers get very surprised when they're like, well, I got this notice says I owe these other taxes, but I sell through Amazon. Well, yeah, you do, but you still owe these taxes.
mhm.
So it's important to know there's an obligation is what I'm saying. Okay.
I
Cool.
will say, yes, thank you, Billy. I will say there is, if you are on here and you have short-term rentals, again, that is considered a marketplace. If you're renting your short-term rentals through Airbnb, VRBO, they also will collect occupancy tax for you. But we're not discussing that today because again, that's a whole nother topic that we have a whole webinar and actually a whole tax manual dedicated to are these short-term rentals. Because again, there are short-term rental marketplaces, but the same uh, the same thing applies for business tax and sales tax, though. If you are uh, if you own short-term rentals that are booked through Airbnb, VRBO, you're still going to be on the hook for income for business tax purposes and franchise excise tax purposes for income from those rentals. Just sales tax is handled through the facilitator, and for short-term rentals, also occupancy tax. All right. Well, Jacob and Billy, here's the end of our slides. I'm going to go ahead. If y'all want to come back in and join me here, I know that we have some questions that you all submitted on your registration forms that we're going to start things off with, and I will turn the chat on now for you to put your questions in.
Okay. I'm sure there's no question, so we're fine. Right. Wait, I'll bet
We'll
you we will
see.
have some.
All right.
But
Chat is on. You can chat with the panel here with the three of us.
yeah, so Jacob, did you have anything particularly that you wanted to bring up? I know maybe one thing we could talk about are people that sell through like Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that. What do you think
Yes.
about that?
Yes, that's a great idea. We actually have some questions in chat related to selling through a marketplace, or at least it's called a marketplace, such as Etsy or Facebook Marketplace. So first, let's address Etsy. Etsy is considered a marketplace facilitator. If you go onto Etsy's website and you order something, Etsy handles the payment processing of the transactions on their platform. And therefore, Etsy is required to collect and remit that sales tax to the Tennessee Department of Revenue on behalf of all the sellers using their platform. Once again, to sort of tie it back to the presentation, that does not mean that you may not be subject to tax such as business tax as a seller on Etsy, but Etsy is considered a marketplace facilitator. And if you open a shop on Etsy, then Etsy will collect and remit the sales tax, and they facilitate the payments for your store that you set up.
Right. And
Um,
let me tag on to that too, Jacob. So, you know, a lot of times people sometimes get caught up in semantics, and I think I'm the same way. I think everybody else is like this too. So when you see people selling things on like Facebook Marketplace, it seems to be a big hot thing now. You know, you've got something extra in your garage that you're selling. I'm not really going to pay sales tax on that, right?
Correct. So when you're dealing with buying things through Facebook Marketplace, or an example of another platform would be like Craigslist. They're very similar. They're just owned by different places or different people. But in those instances, you're really you have a seller who is more than likely than not sort of selling one item out of your garage, and might list it on that platform for $100 or best offer. And in order to receive that good, I might contact them, meet them at a local park, in a parking lot of a Walmart, and hand them a $100 bill for that item. So Facebook Marketplace is not facilitating that payment. And even though they have Marketplace in the name of their platform, they're not facilitating that payment, and therefore would not be considered a marketplace facilitator for purposes of Tennessee sales tax.
Okay.
I do want to point out that some people actually do use Facebook Marketplace as a business and to sell items from their business. So I do want to be clear that if you are selling in sort of more than an occasional and isolated manner, then you may be considered a dealer for Tennessee sales taxes and would be responsible for collecting sales taxes on transactions, even if they're listed on Facebook Marketplace. But I would highly encourage, if that's sort of a scenario that you think might apply to you, looking at our sales and use tax guide on our website to see if you meet the definition of business and whether you need to register with us for Tennessee sales and use tax and business tax, and I guess potentially franchise and excise tax.
Very good. I see another question that somebody put in chat, a little bit off topic, but still kind of neat. On the resale certificates, out of state resale certificates, you know, in Tennessee, we accept resale certificates from other states, right? And Katie brought that up. It's been that way forever and ever. So we would still encourage our Tennessee dealers to use that. But I believe the question that Emily had asked was, what about other states and how do they do it? Emily, I think the answer to your question is that it is up to the vendors in other states and the laws of those other states to determine whether or not, so let's say a Tennessee resale certificate would be honored by a merchant in another state. I think it's very common and typical that they do like we do, but it would be up to the laws of that particular state. Okay. Trying to see if any other questions, Katie or Jacob. Yeah, that's your name, Jacob. Sorry. Uh, what other things do we want to talk about? CPE, somebody mentioned, Katie will talk about that at the end. You'll get a link to get your CPE credit at the end of our presentation today.
Here's a question I do not know the answer to, but I'll just bring it up. JW says, would an internet streaming service with customers in Tennessee be considered a marketplace? You've got me there. I have no idea what that would even mean. Jacob, Billy, do y'all know what that would mean?
So I don't think they fit the definition of marketplace facilitator, but those streaming services, if they're video streaming services, are taxable under the Tennessee Code annotated. Not under marketplace facilitation, but they are taxable in Tennessee.
So are they saying, I'm just trying to make sure I even understand what this means. sometimes I feel like I'm 100 years old and behind the times. Are we talking about like something like a video streaming service where there can be sellers that put their own videos up there that are streamed through I don't even know if
I am not sure about
we don't
that,
know.
but
Okay.
I, not to get too specific, but I think many of the streaming services, sort of what we're talking about, would probably be like your
That's
Netflix,
what I was thinking.
HBO,
Okay.
or I guess it's just called Max now.
Mm-hmm.
Hulu, Spotify. Those are all streaming services. Spotify streams, music, whereas
Mm-hmm.
those other platforms stream video content.
Yeah, yeah, we had a follow-up question to the scenario we were talking about earlier about resale certificates and registration and everything. So, in the example Katie was using about people who are registered to file on an annual basis, someone was asking whether they would be penalized for actually filing on an annual basis and remitting all of their tax all at once in January. Um, the answer very quickly is no, not at all, because that's what your requirement is. Okay, so you may be getting that confused with the obligation for, let's say, franchise and excise taxes, or perhaps federal taxes, where you have to make estimated tax payments in on a quarterly basis throughout the year. That is not the situation with sales tax. You remit as you are registered, okay? Either monthly, quarterly, or annually. Okay.
And I have an interesting registration question regarding someone that is talking about a marketplace facilitator that has 5 marketplace sellers and is asking about how many location IDs would be needed. So if you register with us as a marketplace facilitator, I believe that you get a sales and use tax return that allows you to report to the destination using destination sourcing. And the answer is you would not need a location ID for each seller, but you would need one location ID for the marketplace sales. So any sales that are made through the marketplace. If you're a facilitator that also makes sales of your own goods that are not owned by a seller, then you would need a second location ID. So you would end up with 2 location IDs. One would be to remit sales and use tax on items that you own and are selling yourself, and one for all of the combined sales of the sellers on your marketplace.
Okay, y'all, I just learned something new. So, as a follow-up to the internet streaming question, somebody said they were talking about Whatnot. I've never heard of Whatnot. Okay, this is where I figured it was probably something like that I'm old. I just Googled Whatnot, and it's explore a world of buying, selling, and live streaming opportunities at your fingertips. Okay, so and we've had a couple other questions here. Is this a marketplace facilitator? Is this a market? Here's what I would say. I would do that research on the company and find out, look at your contractual agreement that you have as a seller with whatever it is, whether it's this Whatnot. I think my daughters have bought something off of a TikTok shop. I don't know if that's similar to this. I should probably look into that, right? Anyways, I would say look at your contract. Find out if they are collecting sales tax. That is the first and foremost. If you are one of these Whatnot, TikTok shop, all these, then you have to determine whether you're a marketplace facilitator or not, especially with regards to a requirement to collect Tennessee sales tax if you meet that threshold of 100,000, right? The key here, though, is to make sure that you understand, the facilitator and the seller have an understanding contractually of who is collecting sales tax, if anybody, right? I learned something new today. Thank you all. Now I'm gonna have to look into Whatnot shop. What
Hey,
else we
Katie,
got?
do me a favor. Walk everybody to the webinar video library thing,
Okay.
since it seems to be an issue. I think our QR code is a little bit too small and they're not able to find it.
Okay.
So
Good to know. I'll
just
fix that for next
because we've
time.
had a little confusion here, I want to go ahead and clear that
Sure.
up.
Okay. I'm at tn.gov/revenue. That's our homepage. Scroll down just a bit and click on taxpayer education and outreach. and then you'll click on tax webinars. Okay, so here is where you can find the PDF of this webinar that we're in right now. Scroll down a little ways, and here is our webinar video library. There are 63 total webinars. You can search here by keyword. You can show all of them till we get to 100, I guess. And there you go. While I'm here, actually, I'm going to go ahead and take you over to the topic page about marketplace facilitators and sellers. From the top, from the revenues homepage, tn.gov/revenue, you'll click on taxes, which you can also click on the tile here, and then click on sales tax, and then marketplace sellers, marketplace facilitators, and out-of-state dealers. Here you go. Here is a page that's got some other links to some other places on there. And one more important place I'm going to take you is Revenue Help. So back to tn.gov/revenue, click on Revenue Help. And here we have a whole article database here of information specifically for out-of-state dealers, facilitators, and sellers. If you click on one of those, for example, you'll see you can show all articles here. A lot of this stuff we covered in this webinar, but if you want to just read a little bit more, get it in your brain a little deeper, a few different places there where you can do that. Let me go back one more place, revenue.com, tn.gov/revenue, sorry, definitely not revenue.com, and go over, click on tax resources and tax guidance, and then tax manuals. These are all of our tax manuals, the business tax manual, sales tax manual, information about marketplace facilitators and sellers. But over in industry specific guidance, this is where you'll find that taxation for short-term rental units, information there about the short-term rental unit marketplace, your Airbnbs, VRBOs, businesses like that. More information for you there. Anywhere else, Billy or Jacob, that you want me to show them on our website before I go back to the slides?
I think it would be maybe beneficial to show where the important notices are found. So we reference important notices in the presentation.
Mhm.
So
So under tax resources, you click on tax guidance. Oh wait, hold on. Why am I not going there? Hold on. Oh, it's just spinning. I got it. What's going on with my internet? Uh-oh. Okay, so under tax resources, you're going to click on tax guidance again. That's where you went for the manuals. But here, instead of clicking on manuals, you go down a little ways and there's important notices, and you can click on important notices by tax type here. Lots of different tax types there. Of course, typing in any topic to our search here will bring up important notices as well. Cool, thank you.
Katie, in the presentation,
Mm-hmm.
can you go back to the slide that we did in talking about the food delivery services? Because we had a follow-up question on this too.
Sure.
And Jacob, you may want to weigh in on this a little bit here too. But basically, like it says here at the bottom part of this slide, these delivery network companies can elect to be facilitators and collect tax if they'd like to, but they don't have to. Am I summarizing that correctly, Jacob?
yes. So delivery network companies, per our statutes, actually state that they have the option. They are not considered marketplace facilitators first and foremost, but they can elect to operate like a marketplace facilitator and register as such. So it's really the delivery network company's choice whether they want to operate as a facilitator or not. So that might be an explanation as to why you see one marketplace or one delivery network company charging and collecting sales tax and then another one not charging and collecting sales tax.
So Jacob, you would agree that if they are registered and are collecting the tax, then the selling business would not charge sales tax on those sales and would be essentially able to send a copy of their resale certificate to that registered delivery company. Do you agree with that?
Restate that.
So the restaurant,
Mhm.
okay, and let's say that they are effectively selling that food to the delivery company, okay, who is registered to collect tax in our example, okay.
Mhm.
One of the ones that maybe opted in, I guess is what they're saying. Wouldn't they be able to use a resale certificate and not charge sales tax on that?
Yes, I mean the restaurant would not charge sales tax to the delivery company, and
Right.
then the delivery network company would collect and remit
Because
tax from
there's
the
in this
customer.
scenario, there's one dealer.
Mhm.
There's one dealer left with the obligation to collect the sales tax. In a lot of cases, it's going to be the actual restaurant or the food provider, right?
Mhm.
But in our example here, they can elect to do that. So the question again, who does what? This is up to you to probably figure it out with those companies, what their policy is and what their situation is so that you're collecting correctly. We don't have any sort of master list of all this stuff and all that. So just be careful with it. Collect tax until you probably know that you should not collect tax. That's a good way of protecting yourself from any potential sort of problem. But then, of course, if it's an over collection situation and you need to amend returns, you can always amend. You can amend and create credits that can be used for other taxes or for a refund, if that's the case. And we certainly don't want tax to be collected twice unnecessarily, but we do have to have the tax collected in some way. Okay. Right.
You
Um,
touched on something there. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
I just saw a question come in, not necessarily related to facilitator, but someone is asking if they paid sales tax to a supplier and was charged the sales tax and paid that sales tax to the supplier. Is there a spot on the return for me to get credit or refund on the sales tax I paid? So you should not take credit on your return for sales tax paid to a vendor. You should go back to that vendor and request and provide your exemption certificate and ask for them to provide you a credit memo or a refund on the sales taxes that you paid to them in error.
Right. And if they do that, if they work with you on that situation, then you're allowed to adjust your taxes so that you're not out of pocket for that. Okay. You can do that on a current return if you'd like, as opposed to going back and amending multiple returns or something like that from previous periods.
Yeah.
Keep good records though, right, Jacob?
Yes,
You don't want
absolutely.
some auditor to come down and start questioning you, right?
There's a question here I want to address from Alfonso. Says, as a marketplace facilitator, are service fees to marketplace sellers taxable? Um, service fees uh, to your sellers, I would say I don't think that would be a taxable service. Any fees that are included in the price when you're selling the item, those would be considered fees necessary to complete a, a sale. So those would be lumped into and it could be included in the sales price and subject to sales tax. But I'm not sure like what kind of service fees you would be charging a seller, but um, usually sales tax in Tennessee is based on if it's a tangible personal product or a service subject to sales tax, and there's just a handful of services subject to sales tax. And I'm just I don't know, Billy, what do you think there about if a service fee to a seller would be subject to sales
I'll
tax?
defer to Jacob on that one. What do you think about that from an audit
Mhm.
perspective?
So I would say charging a service fee just in and of itself would not be. Um, Especially if it's charged directly to the seller and is not related really to the sale or
Mhm.
of tangible personal property. I'm not 100% clear on the structure of that service fee
Right.
or the charges made, and so I would probably need a little bit more clarity on what that transaction specifically looks like.
There's a
Um,
section in our sales tax manual very specifically about exactly what services are subject to sales tax. It's not a long chapter and it's not too in depth. Honestly, it's pretty cut and dry, but I would say check that section out in our sales tax manual because like Jacob just said, it kind of depends on what the service fee exactly is. So, um, we're running out of time here, y'all. We may have time for another question, but I want
I've
to go
got one
ahead.
that I wanted to bring up here real
Sure.
quickly. Kim asked this question in chat. It says, if the delivery service collects the tax, then those sales are not reported on the sales tax return. That's her question. So I'm thinking that you report them and exempt them out as a sale for resale. What do you think, Jacob?
so I'm not sure which delivery service we're talking
We're
about.
going to
If
talk about one
there's,
that is actually registered to collect sales tax.
I would say reported as gross sales line 1 and then exempted out as a sale for
Mhm.
On
resale.
Schedule A, right? Yeah.
We're talking about delivery services now.
Yes.
Okay, not marketplace
But
facilitators.
it
Okay.
also it would depend on the delivery service that's being used and whether that
Right.
delivery service has elected to become a marketplace
Right.
facilitator
And
and responsible for
this is where
collecting.
you have to be really careful about what you're doing and making sure that they are collecting it and look in your documentation and
Mhm.
other stuff on their website as far as that goes. And that's very important to do it the right way.
One more question. Will says, are auctioneers, does that include an online auction? And I don't believe it does. I think eBay is a marketplace facilitator, an online platform like that, right? I'm pretty sure eBay's a marketplace facilitator.
Yes, eBay is or
Yeah.
would be considered because eBay is facilitating payments
Mm-hmm.
and for individual sellers on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And,
We'll
and
be on the
coming up in
lookout.
December, y'all, tentatively anyway, is a new tax manual for
Mm-hmm.
auctioneers,
I was just about to say
which
that.
is fantastic. So
Yeah.
we're getting some really good information out there for you
And we'll
guys.
have a webinar at some point in the future
Yes, we
dedicated to
have one
auctioneers too.
scheduled for early next year for that, and that's right.
Good. Well, with that, if we didn't get around to your question, feel free to reach out to us. You can call us at 615-253-0600 or email us at revenue.support@tn.gov. Here is a plethora of other ways to stay in the loop with us. If you are a business owner in Tennessee or deal with customers in Tennessee, please stay in the loop with us, follow us. You can sign up to receive important updates. We are here to help. It's our goal to help you, help us, help you, help everybody here. If we're all in the know, then it makes everybody's lives a little bit easier, right? So we have some upcoming stuff here. Next month, our tax webinar. It is not going to be on the last Tuesday of the month because that's really close to Christmas. I believe that's Christmas Eve, maybe even. I can't remember, but too close. So it's not the last Tuesday of the month. It's on 12/17, and the topic next month is Tennessee consumer use tax. And in January, we are going to have our webinar last Tuesday of the month there, 128, on liquor by the drink tax. Those of you that joined us a couple months ago, we had kind of a broad alcohol taxes webinar, and we promised you we were going to break it down and go into further topics about alcohol taxes. So that'll be kind of the first offshoot of that. And we also have a new business workshop coming up. We offer those quarterly. It's a virtual event. It's about 3 hours long for new businesses. It's coming up on January 8th, and you can get to the registration for that the same way I took you to get to our webinars, but you go to tn.gov/revenue, click on taxpayer education and outreach, and then you'll have an option there to either click on the webinars or click on the new business workshop, and you can register for both of those there. All right, anything else you guys want to add before we sign off here?
Nothing from me. Just want to thank everybody for attending and just note here at Katie's slide, as soon as you exit, if you signed up to receive CPE credit, you'll do a little survey and answer your yes to question number 4. And we will get you your CPE as soon as possible.
do me a favor. If you do need CPE credit, I added another question onto there that that's question number 5. If you need CPE credit, please list your name as you want it listed on your certificate. So thank you, Jacob, for joining us. Very
Yes,
awesome
thank
to
you.
have
Very
you
good
as
job.
Thank you for having me.
always. Sure. And everybody have a good Thanksgiving. See you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank
All
you.
right, bye everyone.